Hello people of the YouTubes. Today we're going to be making an argument for anti-natalism. I've actually made a video about anti-natalism before, but I just feel like I didn't really make a concise argument for it. I've made a veganism video before, which is, I think it's called How People Often Overlook Veganism. But this video is purely based on anti-natalism. I actually kind of expanded on anti-natalism as well on that veganism video, but I just feel like this also deserves its own video. So we're just gonna start off with some propositions that are then gonna draw the final conclusion of the argument. I'm also gonna point out one of the biggest questions that many people may have regarding this topic, and I'm just gonna try to answer that in the most precise way as possible. So we're just going to be starting out with the propositions. So every person is brought into existence without their consent. It is imposed on them. A person's psychology, personality, desires, moral intuitions, and even many of their choices are overwhelmingly shaped by genetics and circumstances they did not choose. Despite this determinism, a person still exists as a conscious subject. They experience the world from the first-person perspective. Their thoughts, desires, beliefs, impulses, and suffering are genuinely their experience, even if they did not ultimately choose to become that kind of person. Because conscious individuals act in the world and affect other conscious individuals, society is justified in holding people accountable for harmful actions. Not because they are the ultimate authors of themselves, but because accountability protects other experiencers. However, since individuals did not choose to exist or to possess the psychology they were given, the responsibility for creating the possibility of that entire conscious existence lies with those who chose to bring them into existence, which is the parents. Creating a new person necessarily exposes them to an unpredictable range of possible outcomes. They may become a victim of extreme suffering, or they may develop traits and impulses that lead them to inflict severe suffering on others. Neither outcome can be ruled out beforehand. Since the future person cannot consent to bearing these risks, reproduction is an irreversible moral gamble imposed on another conscious subject. Avoiding reproductions avoids creating both a conscious being who may endure profound existential suffering and a conscious being who may become the source of profound suffering for others while also being trapped within a psychology they never chose. Therefore, choosing not to reproduce is the only way to completely avoid imposing these existential and moral risks on other conscious beings. So regarding to the key philosophical idea behind this argument is that a person's lack of ultimate control over becoming who they are does not erase the fact that they must be that person. They experience their own mind, desires, conflicts, and actions from the inside. Even if they are determined by prior causes, they are still the conscious subject living through that determined existence. Creating a person, therefore, creates not merely a biological organism, but an experiencer who must bear whatever psychology and life circumstances chance assigns to them. So that is basically the core of this argument, that not because suffering exists or because it can be bad for the world, or for the environment, or just for the person themselves. That is not the argument. The argument is that we are not to impose experience onto someone who we are not, basically. So creating a person, we impose someone to experience someone not only who they didn't choose to be, but also they are to bear the consequences of their psychology. So Obviously, this argument relies on how one is ready to accept as their subjective reality, but I find it to be quite absolute because actually absolute as in not inherent or objective, but as kind of a very absolute in the sense that it's very existential. It's much more of an existential argument than anything else that there is. I mean, what could be more existential than the idea of creating someone? While most things are subjective, this topic is really one of the only things we can contribute to when it comes to metaphysics. The moral responsibility lies in the hands of the creators, not the created. And as for the question that many people may have, which is, isn't that just a subjective idea? Isn't that just your opinion? I mean, as I said before, it's just based on the one who chooses or accepts that as their subjective reality. But yes, it is subjective, but also you gotta keep in mind that after all, even if it's subjective, it still has the most likelihood of causing existential suffering upon someone. Existential suffering as in imposing circumstances or experience onto an individual that did not consent to those things. So that's the whole argument. I think that I actually got this in a pretty good time. So I just feel like this is one of those things that I keep very close to me because I just feel like we are not the ones who really have the right to be the creators of someone else. And I think the positive side of this is that if you really want kids, then just adopt a child. That is I think that's actually something that I might do as well at some point if I'm in the state of being able to be a responsible parent for someone. And I feel like that's also one of those things many people not only impose experience onto someone, but they are also very bad parents. That is that combination literally is the reason of cycles within people's psychology. But yeah, I just think that is very important to me, considering I'm very focused on this topic overall, the upbringing of someone, the parenting parts of things and stuff like that. Anyways, if you have any questions, comment them down below. I'm gonna try to answer them either as a reply to you or then as a follow-up video. Because if this video gets traction among not only the anti-natalists but the pro-natalists, I could possibly kind of expand on this topic if you have any arguments. So I basically got everything that I really need to talk about this topic, but I feel like there still might be arguments that the pro-natalists or just the people who don't really have any inherent or not inherent but subjective opinion about it, they might have arguments, and I just think that's important that those come to light. But yeah, I will see you in that video, or then I'll just potentially never hear of you, or you'll never hear me type shit. Yeah, I'm just gonna close